Hello, and welcome to Sugar, Silk and Stretch, a unique boxing podcast brought to you exclusively by Ace Podcast Nation. My name is Ben Doughty.
Hi, I'm Gary Stretch.
We are, as you will notice, we are minus the Silk this Friday night because he does whatever one-eyed superheroes do on a Friday night when they're not talking to Gary Stretch and myself. So Gary, I've ignored, to be honest, ever since the big event. Well, supposedly big event was announced for, I think it's July 20th. I know that much. I've ignored it studiously on my kind of social media. The significance of that being that I have a tiny bit of clout and I have an audience and people expect me to talk about matters of boxing import. I don't consider it a matter of boxing import, but you wanted to talk about the Mike Tyson thing because you take the view that people it's in our face. People are talking about it, so you wanted to discuss it.
Yeah, I know you're probably more of a purist than I am, and these kind of things get up your nose, but it is part of it's relevant, it's happening. Mike is a part of our community, Tyson.
Yeah,
I think it's a discussion, whether positive or negative, it should be discussed because it's about to happen. And this is where our game, the game that you love and have been involved in for so long, Ben, this is where it's going.
Well, I think you're right in the letter statement. I'd just like to clear it up. Am I a purist? I don't know. I'm passionate about boxing.
You're an old-fashioned purist for sure. You love the game, and you
I
got
don't, but
massive
when you
insight
say
to the game, Ben. And
I don't associate.
I do believe that you are a purist. If I was to talk about
Maybe so, but I don't associate purity with professional boxing. So I already understand that there's a cynicism which is necessary to have any knowledge of the game and any kind of any sort of involvement in it. There's a mandatory cynicism that comes with it, and I'm okay with that. But and when you say they get up my nose, to be honest, no, they don't. I just literally ignore them, Gary. I've ignored every similar event, And so I also ignored Fury and Ngannou, and I wouldn't be drawn on that. And then obviously when Ngannou put in the ludicrously credible performance against Tyson Fury, I changed my tune, and we covered Joshua and Ngannou like it was any other big fight. And then when you see what happened to him, Ngannou, if that had been his first pro fight, I would have ignored that too. And then when it happened, I would have said, "I told you so." So the curveball and the spanner was in the works. We was with Fury, But with the other thing, it's not even. I don't know if it's going to be registered as a professional fight and all the credibility that supposedly implies, Gary, or whether it's going to be an exhibition. But I can't say it's massively talked about and it's going to earn people a lot of money. But I can't say it's relevant, to be honest with you, because I don't see what it's doing.
The exhibition statement, Ben, just means it's not going to be put on your record. However, they're going to go at each other like they want to kill each other, because
Do you really believe that?
Yes, Mike's going to go. Mike's got his legacy and his ego on the line, and Jake Paul's trying to prove something to the world. And so it's, there's no such thing as an exhibition in that regard. The only exhibition status would mean whoever wins or loses, it's not an official boxing record. But
can we clarify? We don't know that yet. There are moves to try and have this accredited by some commission. Right.
Now, if it's not,
status is unknown.
Yeah, but if it's not, then and it is an exhibition, it won't take away any of the seriousness of the way in which they approach each other and want to kill each other. Because
Well, you say that, Gary, but are you convinced? Because what did you think of the Roy Jones Mike Tyson exhibition in terms of the intent there?
I think it was an exhibition, but I think either one of them, if they could have, would have got the other one out.
So you think they were trying the hardest, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they look like two diluted versions of themselves, which they certainly are. The question on this situation is the diluted Tyson still too much for Jake Paul to deal with, which I do believe he will be. I believe in styles make fights. And I believe that Mike has got the complete wrong style for Jake Paul. With the way he tucks and dives, I don't think he's going to be easy to hit. And I think Jake Paul is easy to hit, and I think Mike will connect, and I think Mike could really hurt him if he hits him. And
I can't even take this seriously. And I want to imagine now that I've been in a deep freeze since, let's say, 1991. Let's say I've been in a deep freeze, and I come to, I haven't got any hair anymore, and I'm talking to Gary Stretch, the fellow who fought Eubank last time before I passed out. for a few decades, and he's talking about Mike Tyson fighting some YouTuber fella. I don't even know what YouTube is. When you say stars make fights and he's got the wrong stuff, I can't take it seriously. That we know Mike Tyson was shot to bits in 2005, right? We know that, yeah? True?
Yes.
And we know
but
the other
Mike Tyson, a shot to bits Mike Tyson beat Joe Average in the street. Of course he can.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're looking at a shot Mike Tyson at the level Tyson was at. So he's shot compared to where he was, but where he is that still way beyond the average man? Of course. It's like you get an ex-boxer, Ben, you get yourself, get myself. Yeah. Let's get into a pub and have a row with some idiots who's drunk. Even though we haven't fought for 20 years, you're going to have an advantage because you know what you're doing. You know how to throw a shot. You know how to get out of the way of a shot. And the advantage goes to the ex-pro. This is no different. You've got a guy who's having a little go at it now, Jake Paul. And this is the sad thing, which is I know what rubs you wrong. And then rightly so. You've got this kid, and one side of me, I give him some respect for the way in which he's taking it very serious. I mean, it's no mystery that he trains hard and he's got a team around him and he's took it very seriously on one side. But whatever credibility you give him for what he's done, you have to take away for the way in which he talks and for the way in which he behaves in regard to talk about what's to fight Canelo. That's a comedy. And secondly, to get credibility, you don't get credibility beating a 60-year-old man. So whatever credibility he seems to try and get, on the next breath, it's taken away because you just simply can't take him serious. If you want to be a credible boxer, which he says he does, go fight a 7-0 or someone with a similar record, genuine, young, hungry, young prospect who wants to become a champion, who's got a similar record to him, not someone who's got a record like he just fought a guy, I think he was 19-2, hadn't fought for 5 years.
Yeah, there's always a caveat.
Every time he tries to do something credible, when you look further into it, there's a catch in the catch of this. It was the guy obviously retired 5 years ago because it was over, and Jake Paul has dug him up, simply used his record as a reference, and so he's fooling the public again. He just put a piece in an article in one of the articles I read. Jake Paul, I'm fighting the greatest heavyweight ever, not the former greatest world heavyweight ever. He never speaks truthful. It's always the bullshit that
and
people.
Also, Gary, never mind. Even if you restore Mike Tyson back to 1986, he's still not the greatest heavyweight ever. And that is all right. That's a matter of opinion. I challenge any credible opinion to prove that case impressively to an audience of knowing listeners.
No, I agree. It's a matter of preference, who you like. And
well, no, it's not. No, it's not a matter of preference. It is a matter of you look at the quality of opposition, you look at the achievements, you look at the prime losses, you look at the most notable victories, you put it against them. There is no way on earth that resume lives with some of the other rarefied heavyweights in that kind of echelon. Mike Tyson is Donald Curry. Mike Tyson is Donald Curry, which is great.
Mike Tyson was a force of nature that captured the imagination, and he was an exciting fighter, and everyone loved him. He was extremely good, dangerous, entertaining. On the flip side, you look at the statistics, he never visited anyone that beat him and reversed the result. So like all the greats like Lennox Lewis and Sugar Ray Leonard, they all lost, but they all generally reversed them results. Tyson never did. Everyone ever beat Mike remained a victor over Mike, and Mike never reversed that. So he had kinks to the resume, and as you rightly say, he had an incredible run, but when you look at the facts of quality and constancy, he comes short with a lot of heavyweights. I mean, Lennox way surpasses Mike's record as a heavyweight with both the amateur and professional. And so I think Lennox is one of the most underrated heavyweights ever. People don't talk. I mean, the boxing people know, but the general public don't see Lennox.
It's funny. I think we touched on that before, Gary. And what I think it is, I don't think he's underrated here in in the UK. But you spend a lot of time in the US, and I think it's fair to say he's probably underrated there in the bigger world, because America's obviously bigger than the United Kingdom. So I think it's interesting when we talk about Lennox being.
Yeah, they don't. The Americans don't put him on the tier, even as a Holyfield, who he beat, as a Tyson, who he beat. I mean, they just don't give Leonard the credibility and they give so much more credit to the people that Lennox beats, which is almost ignorant, but that's the way it is. But like you say, back to your point, Tyson may not have been the greatest ever. However, he was up there. But what Jake Paul is doing now is trying to take a almost 60-year-old man's legacy and steal it for himself in a manipulated situation. And for me, whatever credibility he had or he's trying to get just goes out the window. And my biggest concern for the fight, Ben, is Tyson's safety, and that has nothing to do with Jake Paul. Like, he's not even in the equation when I talk to Tyson's safety. It's a 60-year-old man putting his body through an excessive amount of training. Number one, can he get to the fight? Because, it's been common knowledge he has sciatica, and at one point he was walking with a cane. And the other issue is when you put your body through so much stress, when you haven't been doing it for so long, and we all know Mike likes his marijuana and he's been up and down with substance abuse. When you suddenly start to put your body through this massive amount of change, you could have a fucking heart attack. Who knows? It's like, is he in a healthy place to do this? I hope he is. The other thing is, if for any God forbidden reason Jake Paul was to beat him, I think Jake doesn't understand. He thinks he will get popular. He'll be hated by the world if he was to beat him.
I mean,
he would be disgusted by the world. If he knocked Mike Tyson out, the world would hate the man. So he can't win Jake Paul, no matter what he does. But he thinks he's clever and he thinks he's doing something that's going to take Mike's legacy. It's not going to happen. If he was so lucky enough to beat Mike, everyone would say, what a liberty, 60 years of age. Of course. And if he gets knocked out by Mike, he's going to be laughed at.
For the same reason.
For the same reason. So I think it's a bad move for him. I think if Jake Paul would have wanted any kind of respect, he should have took on a young, decent prospect of similar stats as him as fights and started to take the game serious, and then we might take him serious. But the action in question is a joke, and he'd be remaining to be a joke. Everyone knows it's a money geek, The only good thing about it is if Mike can earn some money and hopefully put this kid in his place, then that'll be the one good thing that comes out of it.
It's interesting as well. When you say if he really was serious about the game, he would do X, Y, and Z. But he obviously doesn't really want to be a fighter. He wants to be a star. He wants to be a star in a boxing context.
I think he knows he can't be a fighter, Ben. I think he knows the game. He's trained enough. I think he knows he's not got what it takes at this stage of his life to catch up and to be anyone. I think this is the fucked up thing about it. I think Jake Paul is smart enough to know that he can't make it correctly in the business, so he's going to do this kind of bullshit all the way through his career.
And we live in an era for that.
And then you get the idiocy of Oscar De La Hoya making a statement. Well, I'm sure if he continues, he'll get a world title shot. Whether he wins that or not is another matter. How the fuck can De La Hoya think that Jake Paul can deserve a world title shot at this? Well,
he definitely don't deserve one, Gary. But the fact he could get one is a very real possibility, isn't it? Because as well as I do, that the business is a joke these days, because we don't have any enforceable rules or standards. And the trouble is, people tend to apologize for that by saying, say again?
Keep speaking.
They tend to apologize for that by saying, as long as fighters are making life-changing money, then I'm okay with it. But to be honest, I don't go with that, because I don't think if you really feel that way, just give fighters money. You know, let's have a benevolence fund so nobody even has to take a punch, and just give them money because everybody should be, you know, have a right to make as much money as possible. I don't see it that way, but as I say, I blame the audience ultimately. If everybody had the attitude that I've got, then they wouldn't make a dime from this venue, and they'd have to go another route because. But what I was going to say,
but the reality of it is, Ben, is it's not even the boxing fans who are making the money for Jake Paul. It's a bunch of kids who don't even know Mike Tyson. So it's not the boxing people who are feeding this guy. He's got these millions and millions of YouTubers, online subscribers. I'm sure the audience of Jake Paul is certainly not a boxing audience. So he's just making money on these ridiculous events. But I hope if karma serves its purpose, I honestly think, I don't know, I'd like to hear your view, Ben, on what you think will happen in the fight.
Honest to God, I got no care.
Stick your neck out. No, you know Jake Paul. You've seen him.
I'm not. It's my respect for you that I'm even talking about it at all, and I don't even know if I've said the words Jake Paul hitherto, but I wouldn't even utter the name.
No, I know. But let's
made me do it. I have zero prediction whatsoever. I have zero prediction at all. I'm not predicting on something as meaningless as that because fuck only knows, Gary. Fuck only knows. Honestly, it's.
I respect that position, Ben. But with your knowledge of the game, looking at a Jake Paul and looking at Tyson where he's at, how do you see the possibilities of the fight?
I don't think it'll be on the level like you do. So you know.
So what do you think's going to happen?
I've only seen a few seconds of Jake Paul or a few things here and there. I know, all right, somebody could say, how can you be so smug and sort of dismissive if you've never even seen the guy? Well, I've seen enough to know he can't really fight. I know he's probably juiced to the gills. He's a strong guy, trains hard. He's not terrible. He looks like one of the better white-collar guys who might be, you know, could perhaps...
Let me ask you this, Ben, and this is different but on the same line. If Tommy Fury was to fight Mike Tyson, how would you see that going?
I don't know, because Fury doesn't look too clever either, but I probably see him more as a professional boxer than the other fella, you know, Paul.
But he beat Paul, but it was a messy fight. He well won it, Fury, but I mean, Paul never. He just made it a messy fight, but Fury tried to win it. His timing wasn't perfect.
Well, I would say he's a cruiserweight, right? Tommy Fury, yes. Okay.
I guess Jake Paul is too.
So yeah, regardless, but so I would say my value base would dictate that any young, decent cruiserweight should be able to beat Mike Tyson now. The ghost of Mike Tyson, who's 57, will be 58 when this event takes place. So I would expect anybody to be, but the fact that Fury was even competitive with the other curly-headed idiot makes me wonder. I don't think Tommy Fury wants to be a fighter, and we don't have any. He never won anything as an amateur. He's beaten a few pros. He's beaten a couple of journeymen, and he's beaten the YouTubers. So maybe Tommy Fury doesn't really have any pedigree at all, other than his genealogy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Anyway, it was just a reference because he had a pretty close fight with Jake Paul, although I think it was closer based on the non-commitment of Paul to just. I mean, anyone can survive. So it was just a messy fight. Tommy tried to do more than he, overreached a little bit, and but it gives you some kind of reference to where Jake Paul's at. But no, it's just, I think the whole event is a joke. My only hope is that boxing laughs at the end of it, that Tyson comes through it in a stylish manner in which he puts Paul to sleep and maybe puts to rest this whole crossover bullshit, whatever it seems to be. It's a time bomb waiting to happen. And remember what I say, Ben. It's a matter of time, and it could be this fight, and it might not be. It might be another one, but it is a matter of time before someone gets really hurt.
One of these things goes pear-shaped. Yeah. Well, golden
Because
era
one thing
boxing.
we know about professional boxing, Ben, it's two primed athletes in the peak condition fighting for a goal or a title or whatever it is that they're doing, equally prepared. And that's why, and we still have some bad outcomes. But when you get into a situation where they're so extreme with the opponents and where they're coming from and all of that, but it's a matter of time before someone gets extremely badly hurt. And let's just say Mike catches Jake Paul correctly, the kid might not wake up. That's the reality of.
Well, Golden Era Boxing, who runs a good YouTube channel with a lot of the old classic fights on there, says Norman Wisdom will be better qualified than Jake Paul to share a ring with Tyson. It's not a fight. It's not even a move around. If Tyson hits him, he'll forfeit the money. It will be rehearsed. So he doesn't believe there's going to be venom coming at him. The only thing I would say,
I think Mike's ego and his legacy is not worth any money. I think Mike.
Listen, Gary. If he was that worried about his ego and his legacy, he wouldn't do it at all. It's the money that is why he's doing it. So
I disagree. And just give me a moment, Ben. I think when you offer a fight to any fighter, no matter where they're at, the principle of who they are, it's always going to be yes. Once a fighter, always a fighter. You put Mike in a situation, certainly on something he thinks he can win. And he's going to say yes. I think that's the fighter's ego. It never dies.
I wish that worked with the younger fighters who are at the top. You know what I mean? When
someone too.
Huh?
Well, it's a business, and I think a lot of the fights don't get made because of the business. Doesn't make sense today, which is why Saudi's making sense because they're getting the money, so they're taking the chances. I think a lot of the fighters turn fights down because they're taking chances without the money, so they're a lot more careful. Whereas with the Saudis now, they'll take the chance because they're going to get the payday. If they lose, at least they get paid and they can set up a life. But I do believe that once a fighter, always a fighter. And if you challenge Mike with someone like Jake Paul, he's never going to say no. And Jake Paul's simply doing it because they're businessman and he sees the money they're going to make. I mean, the numbers they were saying was that Tyson would earn $100 million for this fight. It's crazy.
Well, that's just, but like I say, you got to blame the audience for that. That is fucking cretinous. Anyone who pays a dime for this, you're an idiot. Quite honestly, I'll tell you now, I'm talking to, if you pay a dime for this, you're a fucking idiot. Or 10 pence, let's put it in the UK terms as well. Or 10 euros, 7 euros, 8 euros, I don't even care. But G has asked, is it true they're wearing 8-ounce gloves and headgear? I heard that they're not wearing headgear. I don't know about the 8-ounce gloves.
Ben, it's not a pleasant analogy, but it's like the accident that is you drive by on the freeway that no one wants to see, but everyone slows down to take a look. It's like that's the fucked up thing about this. People like yourself, people like myself, don't want this to happen. However, the hypocrite in me will be interested to see what happens when it happens.
But you know that you've known me.
I know you won't be paying for the fight.
Well enough to know I won't watch it, don't you? You know me well enough.
Well, I think you'll watch it at some point. You won't pay for it, but.
No, listen, I won't watch the rerun or anything, Gary. Honest to God. I'm not saying it for effect. I will not do it. I did not want to talk about this. I did not want to mention it.
After the fact, did you watch the Ngannou Joshua fight? Of course. I mean,
I was doing a watch along with you.
Right. So it is a similar type thing, although
no. Like I said, I went to. I ignored the.
Well, Ngannou's much more qualified and has much more right to be there. He's a fighting man. Yeah. So he had much more credibility than Jake Paul. But I believe that people who won't pay for it, they will, after the fact, they'll still take a look at what happened.
Well, some people will just watch it anyway, and they'll stream it. A lot of people stream things these days.
You probably see it, but if you don't want to see it, you'll be watching YouTube. It'll come on, and you'll just keep it on. And you not that you've gone looking for it, but you'll probably see it.
Trust me. No, please believe me. I won't watch it. It's not a big deal. I'm just not interested. I don't have to make a big a religious zealot thing out of it. I just won't be watching because it holds no interest to me whatsoever. Not even car crash, not even rubbernecking. It just doesn't, Gary. It's just what if someone said to me, what do you think would happen if Ray Mancini fought Ricky Gervais? I'd be like, well, I don't know and I don't care. Or let me think. Let's say Ray Mancini versus one of the white collar lads down the gym who's younger, 30 years younger than him. Don't care. It's not. That is not an interesting premise for me. And how did we get here? Where this is where we're at. Where that becomes. They used to have sideshows back in the day, and fighters used to do these vaudeville tours, and they used to do funny things, wrestling with alligators and whatnot. But Primo Carnera sparring with a kangaroo and all the rest of it. So we always had the sideshows. But when did it replace the? There's a kid I trained for the last few years. His dad gets me to train him in the holidays. And I've met so many great fighters and fighters of note. I've got a picture with nearly everybody. And the only thing this kid was impressed with was, you've met KSI, innit? Can you get me a message from KSI? And I'm like, no, because I don't really talk to the guy. I've met him once. You know what I mean? But that's what these kids... They're getting the wrong information, right? They're getting the wrong information because
But sadly, they're born in an era where that's what they're born in. Like me and you, Ben, when we grew up playing in the backyard or in the park with the sticks and climbing trees. Today they're born with a computer and a mouse, and that's their entertainment. It's just not that they wouldn't enjoy climbing trees in the park, but they're never going to do it because it's just not part of the culture.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. I think somewhere it all went wrong, Gary, because I used to think it was a good thing for personalities to be developed and marketed with boxers. I used to think that was a plus point. And you were an example of that in your own career. You had some forward-thinking publicists who got you out there. You were on the pop shows. You were on cultural shows. You were in the tabloids. And it was a good marketing thing, the model, boxer. You were different. You weren't just the average pug who was going to wind up with a gym bag full of broken dreams, right? And I thought that was good. And same thing with Chris Eubank. He was eccentric. He was different. He was verbose, loquacious, and consequently, because so many people cared, they identified with one side or the other. Let's say with Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank, that they could draw I believe it was 18 million viewers they had for their rematch at Old Trafford. So I thought marketing personality.
Plus, they had incredible respect as fighters.
Yes, so you see what I mean? Back then, I thought we need to market fighters' personalities. Charisma is important, and it needs to be exported to the watching public. But that logic has gone so far nowadays that it's replaced any substance. You know what I mean? So what I used to be totally behind, I now have some serious misgivings about. Do you understand?
Well, because back in the day, there was icing on the cake. Now there's icing with no cake. That's the
Thank you. That's a brilliant analogy. And Mark Flower says even the great Ali fought exhibition fights against martial artists. But I've had that argument came up before Fury and Ngannou. But the difference with Ali is the year that he fought the exhibition with Antonio Inoki in Tokyo, he defended the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world 4 times that year. And that was his sideshow that year. But he wasn't like he was neglecting the main serious business. Whereas today, that's a surrogate. And this is the thing, Gary. How can I possibly regard
my biggest argument, which is in underlying what you're saying, Ben, which is, I'm conceding that you're right, is that this bullshit that's going on with this crossover is whether you like it or not, that's anyone's opinion. If you want to pay the $25 pay-per-view and you laugh at them for doing that, Ben, you have every right to. But where you're correct, Ben, is that not only do you not respect or have interest in it, but you have an issue with it because these crossover fights are now holding up true fights for fighters who've deserved a title shot, who are not getting them because they're waiting in line to fight these guys, and the fights are not happening because they're going into these crossover fights. So the real genuine contenders not get the fights anyway.
Well, you say contenders, we don't have many of them left because they're all bogus champions of one sort or another.
No, but even real people who are waiting for title fights are not getting them, who deserve them because of this.
I apologize. It is like a minefield talking to me about boxing. I get that. I realize you've got to walk on certain things. You go, oh no, he's found another fucking issue with that last sentence. But I guess maybe I need to get out more. Maybe I actually do need another hobby, Gary.
Ben, I think you're correct, and I can't argue with your point of view. I'm underlining the fact that You know, these crossover fights are get in the way of the true game, because a lot of people who should be due to title fights, contenders, or people in the top 2, 3, 4, 5, are not getting them fights because they're sat on hold waiting for these other
Like
bullshit
Jerron
fights.
Ennis, but the thing is, Jerron Ennis is the best welterweight in the world by Terence Crawford, certainly on everything we've seen up to now. And he's not getting the Crawford fight because Crawford doesn't really want it. Crawford's got other more attractive options he'd like to think about. So he gave up the belt, the IBF belt, rather than face him. And then Ennis doesn't seem even that aggrieved. He seems happy to call himself a world champion and defend the IBF belt instead. Same situation to an extent with David Benavidez and Canelo Alvarez, where I don't think Canelo's scared of Alvarez, but he'd just rather do something else than face the guy. Whereas if we had, personally, Gary, I think fighters actually need less autonomy. I think we need more of an enlightened dictatorship from a sporting point of view. I understand why we're not going to get it and why fighters don't want it, and maybe their teams don't want it. But I think if fighters actually had to do things like if Canelo had to fight David Benavidez and Crawford had to fight Jerron Ennis, at least, with a certain amount of regularity, they had to accommodate these obligations, because supposedly they do anyway. They call them mandatories, but it's not the same, is it? Because often they can swerve a mandatory if they want, for one reason or another. There's something that will supersede it. And a lot of the time, the mandatories don't make sense, do they? Because the mandatory's some unknown guy from Ecuador, and you're like, you don't even know how he got to number one in the first place,
Well, I agree both sides of your argument, because there's the mandatory, which is the correct way to go, but it might not make business sense. And I think a lot of these fighters, Canelo doesn't need to make any more money, but he's made enough for all of us. But I think that their argument is, I'm at the top now, I'm going to make as much money as I can, as easily as I can, and good luck to him. But it doesn't serve the fact for those, and for the true enthusiasts who want to see the best be the best. I think Canelo feels he's earned his right to choose. I think he's been in his share of tough fights. And then these last couple of fights now, he's going to pick whoever he wants to and what makes better business sense for him. And if you're, can you argue with a man who's just trying to make a living? I think he's been proven to be the best of a certain era. And now he's doing what, if you was handling him as a business manager, you'd probably do what he's doing.
Yeah, I don't know, because I don't know how much money you can get for fighting Benavidez. I know he was offered an awful lot, supposedly. I don't know how much you can get for Benavidez versus someone else, and I don't know how much they feel Benavidez is a threat.
I honestly think that Canelo would beat Benavidez and quite comfortably, but that's just me.
And you could easily be right on that. I mean, just because sometimes somebody appears to be avoiding a fighter who he could beat, most people feel he could beat anyway.
Honestly don't feel that Canelo is in any way, shape, or form afraid of fighting Benavidez. I just think he thinks he doesn't have a title, he doesn't have value. Why am I going to?
I mean, this is the problem. He doesn't have a title, no, because Canelo's got all the super middleweight titles. This guy is the number one contender, at least with one of the organizations, and he probably should be with the others anyway. And he wants a shot at that title, but we've lost.
And if you look at David Benavidez, let's take Canelo out of the equation. If you look at David Benavidez, his last 3 fights, if you looked at numbers of sales, he can't sell a ticket. So he's not made $1. So he's bringing nothing to the party. He's got no belts, no value. The only value for Benavidez is that he's fighting Canelo. That's interesting. But if he fights anyone else, no one's going to pay for it and no one's going to tune in. So Canelo.
What are those figures about his last few fights? Do you know?
Well, I mean, this I don't even think the pay-per-view. I don't even believe they were pay-per-view. I think they were free TV. I'm not sure, but whatever they were, if you look at them, I know for a fact he's not doing numbers. So he's not bringing numbers to the number.
But I think a lot of fight fans want to see him fight Canelo. Sometimes argument's been used. So that argument's been used that this guy wouldn't draw against anybody else, and people are like, no, but we want to see him fight this guy. That argument was used against Usyk last year with the Fury. Tyson Fury.
The reality is, set Canelo out of the conversation. There's no money for the Benavidez to fight anyone. No one cares. They only care about Canelo. Is this kid the guy who can bring down Canelo? That's the interest, and the underlying fact is bring down Canelo. It's not can Benavidez the best, because if Benavidez is the best and he has to fight Joe Blow to prove it, no one's going to watch it. No one cares that Benavidez is the best. The only care, can he beat Canelo? And that's where Canelo sits with all the cream. The only interest in you is if you can beat me. And if I'm out the equation, you don't own a dollar. And that's the power of Canelo.
Ricky Hatton and Junior Witter was a very similar situation. When Ricky was still at domestic level, really, that domestic supremacy was never settled. And then obviously when Ricky went on to become a world champion, it was never something that Witter was going to get a look in at. And the reason always given by Hatton was that he didn't like Witter and didn't want to help him earn a load of money, like some sort of pension plan type money, you know?
Right.
But fighters shouldn't be able to pick and choose that. That's what I'm saying. That's the problem for me. It shouldn't be up to the fighter.
We say that, Ben, but I think I'm all for the fighters. It's a double-edged sword. I'm all for the fighter taking control of his career, because we never used to, but we never used to make money. Floyd Mayweather was a prime example, if not
there's the blueprint. Yeah, that was his legacy, and this is what we got.
Control of his career, and look what he did with it. And so, at what point do you say they can take control of their careers, but then another point you say they shouldn't? So I think it's an argument that can be well challenged on either side. But I don't believe Benavidez has done. He looks to be a good potential challenge. But has he done anything that screams out, "You have to fight me," to Canelo? Not really. I mean,
no. He just looks impressive. He's a young buck, and he looks like the best super middleweight challenger, right? He looks like the best challenger at 168.
And he's on the borderline. He's on the borderline of becoming a demand for Canelo, but he's not crossed the border yet. But in the next 12 months, he will cross the border, that it will actually hurt Canelo not to fight him. It'll look like he ducked him.
I think we're already getting to that stage, Gary. I think that's what people are saying.
Yeah, I think he's right on the edge now. Canelo, I think he's right on the edge. And if he continues winning Benavidez, then it's a matter of time. And but it's not a fight I'm even that interested in, to be honest. Personally, I'm not a massive fan of Benavidez. I think he's a good, strong, tough fighter. I think if he were to be crazy enough to move up to light heavy and fight Beterbiev, I think his career would end very quickly.
Well, interesting you say that, because his alternative plan, almost certainly the direction he's going to go in, because he won't get the Canelo fight just yet, is he's going to fight that Vorjik who lost to Beterbiev back in 2019. And that's going to be for the interim WBC title, the significance of which is the winner of that fight will face the winner of Bivol versus Beterbiev. So
that's a fight I would like to see, and I think Beterbiev would destroy Benavidez in fine fashion.
Yeah, maybe so. Some comments have been coming in. We've been talking about where did it all go wrong type tone, and some people said, including Jughead, said that the fact that boxing is no longer on mainstream TV is the problem. That's where we've.
How does that affect? How does that? I'm not to disagree, but just clarify me. How does that affect where we went wrong?
I guess we were talking about
where we all went wrong. He's talking about how did we get to Jake Paul v Mike Tyson. I don't know if it's about mainstream TV.
Let me see the comment again. It says one of the reasons for the Misfits boxing nonsense is because boxing is no longer on mainstream TV. It is a contentious statement. Shall we examine it?
Sure. I mean, where we all went wrong is it's not you don't need to be a brain scientist to work that out. The where we all went wrong is that money became higher principle than integrity in the sport, and that's
was it not always though, Gary? Did you not feel it was? I mean, you talk about getting ripped off in the 90s, early 90s. Even I think of Jack Dempsey's day in Tex Rickard, and they were all about the dollar, weren't they?
No, I'm not talking about little money like me getting ripped off for my payday or Jack Dempsey getting ripped off. I'm talking about ripping off the public, the media, with feeding garbage to people, the masses, it's one thing ripping off a fighter and not paying him his money or short changing him. What we've come into an era of where the promoters are blowing fog in front of the world media and the world population, giving them false, making false statements, selling things that are not real, and have been successful in pulling the wool over everyone's eyes and somehow convincing them that there's some legitimacy in the bullshit that they're selling.
Yeah,
and the stupid public, Ben, which you're correct. If more people were like you, I would actually be happy if we said, no, I'm not going to watch the fight, then it wouldn't happen anymore.
And you know, the mafia, in the mob control days of the 50s and the 40s and 50s, when mafia had a stranglehold on boxing, it's funny, they controlled the titles, like the world titles, at often the 8 different weight divisions, yeah, but they didn't fuck with them. They didn't fuck with the integrity, in theory, of that championship. They didn't say, well, there's another one here, or we're going to splinter this, or he's our interim champ, or any of that nonsense. They just had a stranglehold on those all-important, very rarefied championships of the world, you know, which go back to them days.
I'm not glamourifying the mob or that era, but you know, it's a funny thing. You know, Ben, you're from the streets. In the days of the craze and of the gangland and the Richardsons, and all, neighborhoods were a lot safer. You could leave your door open. There would be no pedophiles in the neighborhood because it'd be dealt with. You know, it's like there was a certain amount of order within and understanding on the streets when the crime bosses and families were around. They demanded order, and people who were not good people or who they knew the consequences. So there was a certain amount of integrity then. The whole world's gone crazy at the minute. I mean, I talked about it the other day. It's like how far we've come, but yet how far behind we are. America used to be a country where freedom of speech was the greatest achievement, but there's no such thing as freedom of speech anymore. You can't say anything without getting railed over the coals, or put in jail, or put in court, or having your being judged by having any kind of opinion that doesn't fit in. You can't even.
I spoke to Glenn McCrory the other day because I was interested in getting him on the show, and Glenn has been pretty invisible lately. Right? He used to be all over the boxing media, yeah. I mean, we know his Sky gig finished a few years ago, but he did other stuff. We worked together at Boxing Social, but Glenn said he got kind of cancelled. He said it's been a nightmare the last couple of years, and he had some trouble because. Don't quote me. I'm quoting myself because we're on a live show, but from what I'm saying is I'm not exactly sure of the details, but it seemed to revolve around him calling a Muslim woman pet. He called her pet, and apparently that's what he got hauled over the coals for.
What?
Pet. You know, Geordie expression of endearment. Okay. All right, pet. And he appears to have suffered. He appears to have suffered career and personal life damage from calling a Muslim lady pet. Once again, if I've got this wrong, people forgive me. But he had some kind of problem, and he experienced some kind of woke.
Ben, I can say certain things that could be offensive to someone, but if you look at it in the context in which it's said, we have to give people some leeway, because you can say there's, the C word in the English language that is used daily in London, right? Let's say, by the boys. In my day, was a term of endearment.
Yeah.
Where you see you and right, and it was, and if you said that in the wrong company now, you get hung, strawn, and quartered. Like, you've got to put it in context. Like, we can all say things which, when you look at them in print, look terrible, but in the context they were said, they were so innocent. It's sad. But now you've got to be really careful what you say or who you say it to. So there is no freedom of speech anymore. It's all rubbish.
Yeah, we do live in bizarre times, for sure.
Scary time. It's a scary time. I just saw a thing with, I think it was Bridget Bardot? She was talking about, the Me Too, which I'm sure is is there was a place for it. There was a lot of horrible things going on in film and in the business, which I'm so glad that people were courageous enough to come out, and for the guilty people who got caught, fantastic. But it also flipped over on its head, and a lot of people were not particularly, there was money involved, so that a lot of that took into it, which was with anything it happened. So the pluses and minuses. But I remember, I think it was Bridget Bardo, I saw her saying that she felt sad that she doesn't feel like a woman anymore because men can't look at her like they used to, or say something.
Too intimidated to express any kind of
she felt like
sexuality and femininity.
Yeah, she would go in a room and feel invisible because everyone was afraid to even, there's no fun anymore. And I understand both sides, but we've come to a place now where we're all on eggshells, and as much as the suffering, rightly so, obviously, hopefully it doesn't happen again and it's eradicated because of it, but a lot of the fun and the playfulness also goes away with it too, So
yeah, I like you say,
we sit in a white world that's pretty boring, Even comedians now are afraid of the material. Back in the day, the Chubby Brown, the Bernard Mannings, and imagine Bernard Manning or Chubby Brown in America these days. I'm sure, but
well, it was interesting because I watched a few Bernard Manning stand-ups a few months ago last year. I don't know why I was taken with the nostalgic desire to see some of his act again, and it was interesting because he was talking about the racism thing, and he said he sometimes would talk to black people who were at the show before the show. I'm not suggesting it was inundated with Afro-Caribbean population, but he said sometimes people would bring people backstage to meet him, and he'd say, I hope you're not offended. You don't have any problem with the black jokes, do you? And they said, no, not at all. They thought it was funny too. So, whereas that kind of racial banter now is obviously, it used to go on, right? You remember it in the gym, yeah? I'll give you an example. When Jim Watt, in his autobiography, he talks about Terry Lawless fixing a defective light in the gym, and he says to Morris Hope, "What white man heap clever? He make light work." And then and Morris Hope goes along with it and goes, "Buena, him miracle maker." That sort of thing.
What?
Huh?
Morris Hope said what?
He said, "Buena, him miracle maker." It was in because he makes the light work. White man heap clever. That was normal banter, right, in the 70s and 80s, right? Between certainly groups of males, of interracial extraction. Whereas nowadays, there's a lot of, there's a lot of
ridiculous. I mean, well, I rest my, I sit on the fence because there's arguments on both sides, but a lot of fun's gone out the world because. There's always going to be someone who's going to create a problem with something that may be completely innocently or meant to be innocent, but you can make anything look bad. So it's sad, but that's where we're at.
Yes. We talk about some more credible boxing. Tomorrow there's a show in Birmingham, Magnificent Seven, a theme that Frank Warren has used on various occasions. You've got Joe Joyce on the show. You've got Liam Davies on the show. You've got Dennis McCann on the show.
How'd you see what's your experience or your knowledge about Cash Ali?
Well, I believe Tim Witherspoon, my friend, used to train him back in the day. He used to train him down in Doncaster when Tim was staying in the UK for a bit. I know that he bit David Price, remember that? And he got pelted with plastic cups as he, plastic pint pots as he left the ring. He hasn't really lived down the stigma of that. You mentioned Cash Ali, and most people mention the bite against David Price.
He was getting pretty well beat in that fight, right?
He was, yeah. I imagine. I
saw it.
I think he probably has about as much chance of beating Joe Joyce as he does of winning the Miss Black America pageant next week. But Joe is in a funny position, right? And it shows you how changeable this game is and how cruel it can be. When he beat Joseph Parker and he dominated Joseph Parker and stopped him in good fashion, Joe was knocking on the door of, massive life-changing opportunities. He takes a tough fight against Zhang to stay busy. Fair play to him. Gets knocked out. Takes the rematch straight away. Gets knocked out again. Next minute, Joe's fighting on this show in Birmingham now, and Parker is on this incredible renaissance wave, and he's making big money. Fighting out at Saudi. It's a funny old game, isn't it? A 2-year flip around.
It was your last fight. Did you see the weigh-in today?
I didn't. Did you?
Yeah. Have a guess what Joe Joyce weighed in at?
Right, Joe, because he was heavy for the Zhang rematch. 260 something.
286.
That's big, right? It's heavy, and he was
heavier
heavy.
Than Zhang. He was the heaviest he ever weighed for Zhang at 282. He weighed 286 today, even heavier. And Cash Ali weighed in at 222.
That's an old school heavyweight there, Gary. That's just an old school.
So very lean, very small. He was talking that he said before the fight he thought Joe looked too big, and he thought that his size was the right size, and that he would have agility and movement. But again, it's like there's levels. I don't know enough. I saw the Price fight, but the David Price fight where he was pretty much getting beat, and the bite, that was I only actually glanced on that because I think it popped up somewhere because of the controversy. But I don't know much about Cash Ali. Was he a prospect at one point?
Sort of, but a kind of middling prospect. You know what I mean? I don't think you'd ever call him a hot prospect, but he was an ambitious fighter. Yeah.
Is he a puncher or not?
Not usually so. Not so you notice.
So they put him in with a non-punching. It's an easy fight.
I mean, let's face it. If Joe were to lose, I do think his career is over effectively. Sure. So, but you've got the other Liam Davies, who a lot of people say good things about. He's fighting that Robles, the one who beat Lee McGregor for. I don't recognise the credence of an IBO title, but he beat Lee McGregor for the IBO super bantamweight title, so he's the holder of that title now. Liam Davies is fighting for that tomorrow. It should be a decent fight because the guy that beat McGregor, the Mexican who beat McGregor, obviously he's a bit useful, and I haven't seen much of Davies, but people say good things about him, so that's a decent fight on the card. Dennis McCann as well, fighting Brad Strand, who's a kind of up and coming Liverpool prospect, and that's another one. It's not a bad show. I mean, Nathan Heaney's on the show, that fella from Stoke-on-Trent who sells shed loads of tickets. So.
I saw something about it. Well, a couple of thousand tickets he sold already for this one.
He delivered them all personally. You see that? They said he delivered them all. That's what you've got to do, though. I mean, it was different in your era, I believe, but the way it was, anybody who turned pro, certainly in this century, if they weren't anybody, if they didn't have a big rep from the amateurs, they were told, basically, here it goes, son. We give you $3.5 grand's worth of tickets to sell, and we want 2,400 back the day before the fight, or the day of the weigh-in, whatever. And then whatever change you've got left is your own business. Yeah, that was the way it was. You kind of had to sell 100 to ensure that you were going to make a purse of about £1,000 for a 4-round contest. That was the standard model of a ticket deal, and it's a bit different if you've got a TV promoter, and the TV money. But as you can see, someone like Heaney, who's fighting at this sort of level with this level of exposure on TNT Sports, is still going around hand delivering the tickets himself. They must have to shift them, mustn't they? You wouldn't bother if it didn't make sense, would you?
No, I mean the heavyweight that's coming up now, who just won the Central Area title. He's a big ticket seller, isn't he? What's his name? The London boy.
The Southern area, Johnny Fisher.
Johnny Fisher. He's a ticket seller too, isn't he? I know his dad. His dad handles a lot of the tickets, and they're still grafting them to at this stage of the game. He's still actively. It's like a part of his day, the father, to sell the tickets. You know what I mean? So
did you worry yourself about shifting tickets personally, or was that you didn't have to worry about it? No.
And I fought on many a show where sell out, every show sold out. And they were not coming to watch anybody else. I'm sure some people had some followers, but my event sold out because it was my event. I know that. That's what I was angry about. I And I never made money from ticket sales, but there was never an empty venue when I fought.
This has always fascinated me, right? And I believe you were on this, Bill, and we've never spoke about it. When James Kinchin fought
Mark Kaler.
No, when James Kinchin fought with Buster Drayton.
Yeah.
You were on the bill. Mark Kaler was on the bill as well. So James Kinchin versus Buster Drayton, two really decent world-rated middleweights fighting on a non-televised show at the York Hall on a fucking Sunday. How unbelievable in Shangri-La is that? And John McGarvey was on the bill as well, I believe. But you and Kayla definitely were. I think Bozo Edwards was on the bill as well, right? Now, Gary, that's unbelievable. That no promoter today would put that on at the York Hall on a Sunday. For so many reasons. So how did that? I mean,
I remember that bill so clearly, Ben, because I sparred with McGarvey in the Beckett before.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a couple of days sparring, yeah. And I remember the bill clearly. No, it's like 4 or 5 world-class fighters. And
what an amazing show at a small hall on a Sunday. And you know what, Gary? You might remember this too. It was the day before Hagler Hearns, because it was April the 14th, 1985. Hagler and Hearns fought the next day in Vegas. But so there was, what I'm saying is, there was a seriously different audience and a seriously different demographic around them, wasn't there? That was possible for Mickey Duff to put that on off TV and still make money.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever fought in York Hall where they've not been hanging off the rafters. You know what I mean? That we were sellout and incredible atmospheres. And what's about the York Hall? It's like you're in a dome. They're like hanging above you. They're so the top rafters are over the top of the gym, over the top of the ring. It's like everybody. It's such an incredible place to fight for atmospheric reasons. And but yeah, I've never seen York Hall when I've been in it, other than packed to the rafters and great atmosphere. But yeah, they had some amazing nights there, and often not televised. Yeah, that wasn't the only one. There was a few good nights that were not televised.
Whereas these days, what they put on, because the small hall shows today are dire, to be honest with you. I don't know if you've been to one in recent years, but they're sometimes across the whole card, you can just see the ticket seller and the journeyman, the away fighter. Home corner, away corner.
Well, not to put a stink on the conversation, but we look at this Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight. It's at an arena now, 90,000 capacity, and it will sell. And that's how crazy the game's got to become. And 90% of it will not be boxing fans.
Oh, well, you may have noticed I titled this show "The Commercial Value of Mass Stupidity."
Yes, so it's correct. I have no argument with the title, Ben.
Good. So, you've got me to talk about it for nearly an hour, or on and off for nearly an hour.
Quick question, Ben, and I know we're going to cover this on a different show, but what is your thoughts on Pacquiao Ben?
That's an interesting scenario, isn't it? Because you've got an all-time great who is obviously faded, and you've got pretty explosive young buck who's looked less explosive, perhaps. Certainly is less far. I'm not going to hold the other one against him, against the tough Mexican, but he didn't look too explosive last time out against, what was his name, Peter something or other.
Was that at 54, Ben?
It was at 154 pounds. Yeah, I think it's an interesting fight, isn't it? It reminds me of Amir Khan versus Marco Antonio Barrera kind of thing, but Pacquiao was better than Barrera was, as he proved when they fought. And maybe Ben isn't as good as Khan. I don't know. I mean, you were very high on Ben. I think it was.
I was very high, and not wrongly so. But I'm very high on his potential. But I got a very rude awakening when I saw his last couple of fights, and I think that I was too high on his potential. I think his potential and his ability have not caught up with each other yet. And I think that Pacquiao will expose that, because I think that Pacquiao's got, I know Pacquiao because I've been around him so much because of Freddie Roach and the wild card, and even for the last many years, he is a force of nature. He's never out the gym. He's going to be the same as you expect. He's not going on.
He must have been out the gym a little bit since he retired.
No, but he's not. This is the thing. He trains every day. He's a maniac. He does crazy shit. He does like crazy physical things all the time. He's very, very physical, and he will be, let's say, 95% of what he should be. Like he's be very small percentage where he's on the slide. Trust me, I just know the animal. So
Well,
Ben,
he was clearly on the slide a few years before. Never mind now.
when you say that until he went back and beat Keith Thurman, he was way on the slide, and then he came back and beat Keith Thurman in stylish fashion. So he may have had a bad night, but I know on a physical aspect, he's not. He's a freak. He is a freak of nature, Manny. But it's not a freak. He's a workaholic, and I don't think he will be on the slide in regard to that it will affect his performance. I think, of course, he's not Pacquiao of 10 years ago, but he's still really special. He's very, very physically. He remains like he's not a normal human being. And so I think he will have a little bit too much experience for Ben at this stage.
Do we know whether it's definitely on yet, or is it still in the
It said it was on. I read some. I don't know how they confirmed or not, but they said it was on.
The date's not been announced. It hasn't. It's not on. I know that.
No, I'm not saying a date, but it seems to be that they're going to make it. They both. I mean, you saw them on the Fury Ngannou fight. But they were both extremely eager to get it done. So I think there's no one going to stand in the way of it. Again, I think based on, but I think this is Ben the fighter. But again, like I have mixed thoughts on your comments and mine when you say fighters controlling the careers or shouldn't. In this case, I think that a really good promoter would wait a couple of fights for this. But if Ben is pushing it and Eddie Hearn's going with it, I think the fighter could be putting himself in a bit of danger because I think he should be protected. He's not quite ready for it. And I love Ben. I think another 2 fights he'd be ready, but I don't think right now that he's got the experience to beat Pacquiao.
I think he needs a big fight because he's in a strange situation at the minute where Britain still hasn't, he's still out in the cold in the UK for now, for the time being.
I understand, but not this fight.
yeah, but you know what I mean? Because he can't keep having club show style fights in Las Vegas or where was the other fight?
Oh, he needs a big fight. He needs a glamorous fight. He needs something to get up for. But if you're a real boxing expert, I would say there's a lot of them fights out there that are not Manny Pacquiao at this stage. I think there's better fights, easier fights, same money, but not Pacquiao. I think Pacquiao's a little bit too much at this stage.
When was the last time Pacquiao boxed?
2 years, is it?
And was it? What was that guy's name? The African guy.
He beat Manny on points, which I didn't think he won the fight, but they give it to him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he lost the fight, Pacquiao, but the guy was good. It was close and it was competitive and it was a little bit boring. And the guy stuck behind a long jab, awkward, and it made it a boring, horrible fight. Pacquiao couldn't really get to him, which was a bit shocking. But yeah, he lost to a fight, but it was
Cuban, right? Cuban, yeah?
Yeah.
Black Cuban.
Yeah, unusual name, Mungayas. I can't remember his name, but it was and then he got beat, the guy, against someone else immediately after. But anyway, it was not a fight that made Manny look like he was on the slide. It just looked like one of them awkward fights that the stars were not great, and it was a pretty boring fight.
I think it's intriguing simply because you've got that kind of the two factors of Pacquiao being as old as he is, 45. Initially, he was trying to enter the Olympics. That was his idea of a new challenge. He wanted to take place. He wanted to take part in the Paris Olympics this year and try and circumvent the age limit so he could become.
This Ben is where I agree with. Where his age is, he still will have the experience to beat Ben because of his experience. This is a very different scenario to Mike Tyson having the experience at 60. That's the
Of
big
course,
thing.
yeah, of course. I mean, if
That's where it becomes a joke. And even though I think Mike will have enough, it is a joke. When you say or I say Manny should have the experience to beat Ben, that's realistic. Even though he's way past his prime, it's a possibility. But to say, imagine Manny Pacquiao fighting someone at 60 years of age. And that's the ridiculous situation that we're in now with Mike Tyson.
By the way, that guy was called Dennis Ugas. I knew
you
can't think of something when you're on the air, but like I say, it's a credible fight. Some people might find it may leave a bad taste in their mouth for some. The concept of Ben versus Pacquiao, they may think it's a kind of pugilistic grave robbing type mission. But I agree with you certainly that Pacquiao, I mean, you seem to fancy Pacquiao as a favourite in the fight. Whether one does or doesn't, I think it's a credible matchup and it's an intriguing matchup because it's youth versus age, with the class gap massively on the side of age. But there's other caveats. The guy's been inactive and all the rest of it. It's not a fight I massively care about or look forward to. How do I feel about the Ben situation morally? I don't know. I mean, he may have had all I'll say, right, if Conor Benn is innocent of any skullduggery, then he's had a really rough ride. That's what I will say. But
on that note, Ben,
did you see Alicia Baumgartner got the green light as well? She failed a drug test, yeah?
Yeah.
She got the green light. What it does seem to be the case, Gary, is any fighter of
Dillian White
value gets a pass. Yeah?
Dillian White and others got the...
Yeah, he did, Gary. The Texas Boxing Commission ruled on it because he holds a license with Texas, not with the British Boxing Board. So, and he's fighting Christian Hammer in a hotel in Ireland somewhere. Do you know that?
Yeah, I read it. Yeah.
So
on that note, Ben, do your famous summons up without the introduction, without the what's the word? Without the
I wish I could help you.
When someone without the interruption of Silk.
Yeah. Well, he seems to think we were interrupting him too much last week, but I don't know.
He always interrupts your summons.
One thing I will say before closing is, and I said this to you earlier on the phone, it's never an issue when there's two people on the screen, two talking heads, whether it's Sugar and Stretch or Sugar and Silk. It's not an issue. It's the three of us together. Then we go into overdrive saying, no, hear me now. And we're all competing,
But I think, again, it should all be taken in the good light of the fun of the show. And if you've got to shout for your voice to be heard, it's a bit of fun, and I don't think anyone minds. Other than you can't get too sensitive about it. It's all in good fun, and everyone knows more so than anyone that you love and I love the Silk, and we value his opinion and his point of view. So it's never going to be in a negatory fashion. It's just, I guess, passion comes and you all want to jump in, and I don't mind it. It is what it is, and we have to. We'll have an annual meeting on it, and
we will
resolve the situation.
In the meantime, thanks you guys that do watch us every week. We have a bubbling little hardcore fan base. We love you all for that. We want a mainstream audience and a bigger audience because we want to monetize it more. But at the same time, we will never alienate you guys, the faithful who are here at the start. Tune in on Sunday night for another installment of Sugar, Silk and Stretch, hopefully with the Silk. In the meantime, I say this all the time. If you're not one of the hardcore who's already subscribed to us, then press that subscribe button. That way you'll be availed of any content we ever come out with. And it's all unmissable. You know it is. Do yourself a favor. Be lucky. Keep punching.
Take care.